Am I crazy or is this new Beedrill EX kinda goated? Well, I did build 15 different decks featuring Mega Audino, so yeah, maybe I am crazy. But the playability of Beedrill seems surprisingly high. For a single grass energy, it does 110 damage for each Beedrill or Beedrill EX you have in play. So 3 equals 330 damage, all for a Grow Grass energy. Except you probably wouldn't play too many Grow Grass since Bug Catching Set doesn't find special energy and you'll need it to find Pokemon and energy. Ignoring the fact that this arrives 2 months after we lose 151 Beedrill, the deck list seems straightforward. Throw in 4 Weedle, 4 Kakuna Matata, 4 Beedrill, 4 Forest, 4 Bug Catching Set, 4 Pokepad, Max Rod, and at least 1 redeemable ticket. Now you have a deck that can one-shot Dragapult EX. Mega Lucario will be a little tougher since Vitality Band is gone, but you could always include a 1-1 Lilligant for that matchup. Like when you're attempting a Cleveland Steamer, you do need a partner. For Beedrill, since it doesn't need Meganium, card draw is paramount. The Dunsparce is perfect, allowing you to constantly churn through your deck. And since you'll run at least 3 Forest of Vitality, Team Rocket's Watchtower isn't really a concern. Additionally, I don't think Celebi is a bad idea here. This little guy either one-shots a Badoo or finds Grass Pokemon and Forest of Vitality, all for a single Grass. As for the SPEC, Max Rod is definitely the best since you need to have 3 Beedrill EX in play at a time to do anything. But you will have to run Sacred Ash anyway, so don't be afraid to sneak a Grand Tree into a list instead. Though personally, I think Legacy Energy might be better, potentially forcing them to KO 4 Beedrill instead of just 3. If you really want to be drilling their mom, you could pair it with Reuniqueless or Tatsugiri EX. That's a terrible idea since you can get it up to 440 without them and there's literally zero synergy with either. But you could be the first person in existence to say you did 550 damage with Beedrill EX, which I guess is something. As for Expanded, this thing will be absolutely insane. There's the Multiply Kakuna, which means you can have 4 Kakuna in play at a time, plus some Weedle that can be candied into Beedrill. But that pales in comparison to Elusive Master Baby Beedrill, who puts itself directly into play if it's the last card in your hand. So you can have 4 Beedrill EX and 2 Baby Beedrill in play at the same time, do 660 damage for 1 energy, and make your opponent hate life. When Mega Floette EX was first revealed as part of that initial leak, I was underwhelmed. A 250 hit point 3 prizer whose first attack was just a picnic basket, and a second attack that cost 3 Psychic and did just 200 damage? Absolutely horrible, even in a world where Psychic hits the top 2 decks for weakness. Sure, Eternity Bloom accelerates 4 Psychic into play, but it's really only useful turn 1. And the only way you're pulling it off is with multiple Wondrous Patch. Except the top 2 Psychic attackers post-rotation are Clefairy and Mega Diancie, who only need a Telepath Energy and Wondrous Patch to attack, making them much more efficient. Well, I'm glad I waited to officially pass my judgment on this card like I'm Arceus, because it takes advantage of a brand new mechanic that nobody expected, evolving stadiums. If Prism Tower is in play, you can play Hyper Rogue Angie Floette on top of it. If you have no idea what the hell a Hyper Rogue Ange Floette is, play Legend ZA. And if you're confused how you can play 2 stadiums in 1 turn, this is the one case where double dipping is acceptable. Once you get the second stadium down, which I'm assuming discards Prism Tower in the process, Mega Floette gets 150 extra hit points. So it goes from 250 to 400. Slap a Hero's Cape on it, the stupid thing has 500 HP. Unfortunately, even with the boost, my original opinion isn't changed all that much. For starters, Floette has a metal weakness. If you hit into, say, an Archaludon EX, they one-shot you the following turn. On the stadium side, unless you're running multiple Sawsbuck, reliably getting both at the same time is next to impossible. Sure, Colress's Thicacity and Petrol help, but they only get 1 stadium. And if you're running Secret Box, you ain't playing Heroescape. Worst of all, this Chen Pao exists and we'll see a lot of play post-rotation, easily bumping your stadium. Or a Dragapult player will just drop a Jamming Tower on you, ruining your life. But Pilot, I hear you say, we know you put the ass in compassion, so why can't you have any ear? Well, my current favorite subscriber, Wally puts all the energy back into your hand and Floette requires 3 to do 200 damage. I know we're moving away from a one-hit KO format, I just don't think Mega Floette's able to take advantage of it. And that's with me being generous and assuming you'll get the turn 1 Eternity Bloom every single time. Honestly, you're probably better off running this Swoobat to completely clear it off the board rather than healing it, unless you're confident you can loop Eternity Bloom and Wally every single turn. I know it may seem harsh, but I'm going to give Mega Floette 2 toes out of 5 right now. With all that said, someone they clearly want us to pair with Mega Floette is Xerneas. This card is definitely fine, but like the normal meaning of the word, not the fine I'd use to describe Jennifer Lawrence. Because it's unclear whether a deck with lots of Psychic Energy will be good or even necessary post-rotation. Remember that both Gardevoir and Xatu rotate on March 26, so an attack for 3 Psychic that does 30 damage for each Psychic Energy you have in play is a bit unwieldy. I honestly think a better partner than Floette is Mega Gardevoir. Except without experience share, you'll need to use things like Smoochum and Wondrous Patch and Energy Switch. And I definitely won't use this opportunity to point out that Smoochum accelerates 2 energy into play for free, while Floette needs 3 energy for 4 while not one-shotting a Pheasantipity and giving up 3 prizes. That would be far too unfair. Now, I know it seems weird to be Mr. Negative about a card that's eerily similar to Azumarill EX who did surprisingly well in my gameplay video. Well, that thing only needs 7 energy to take big knockouts, whereas Xerneas needs 10 or 11. Azumarill also synergizes perfectly with Terrapados and Glass Trumpet to activate the baby Azumarill and flood the field with energy. Going that route, baby Azumarill does 230 damage for 1 energy, whereas Xerneas needs 8 energy to do 240, 3 of which are on itself. And let's not forget that Xerneas needs to be paired with Lily's Clefairy, except it's a heck of a lot easier to just use Lily's Clefairy with a Lily's Pearl. Basically, if there's ever a Psychic deck that can regularly have 10 plus energy in play at a time, Xerneas is awesome. Until then, Xerneas will have to sit in the binder crying about how it just missed a world with Gardevoir and Xatu. Switching to another Psychic attacker that jacks my lantern, there's Gourgeist EX. For a single Psychic energy, it does just 30 base damage. But for each of your bench Pokemon with a damage counter on them, that's increased by 50. I know I just ragged on a card that requires a stadium, but Floette requires 2 different ones. Gourgeist just needs 1. Have Risky Ruins in play, any Pokemon you bench gets 2 damage counters. With a full bench of slightly maimed Pokemon, Gourgeist is a stage 1 dealing 280 damage for a single Psychic. That's Mega Clefable's top end for arguably less work. I mean, Colress finds Risky Ruins and Telepath Energy, which at least gets the combo started. In addition to Risky Ruins, there's the Emolga who hits everyone in play for 10 damage. Or Diggersby, who's a little more destructive. Obviously, punching yourself in the Great Balls is rarely a good idea in a Dragapult Munkidori Dusknoir world, but you do one-shot Dragapult for 1 energy all day. And if you want to deal with higher HP non-Psychic weak Pokemon, there's Area Zero and Frostlass. Yes, it's stadium reliant, but it's definitely doable. It's just a shaman that 151 Dodrio rotates out of standard 2 months before Gourgeist arrives. You know what, maybe I'm being a little too lenient on Gourgeist, especially when Lily's Clefairy by itself can deal over 200 damage before weakness with Diancie at 240. And let's not forget about Hop's Trevenant, who can deal 210 damage for free if all modifiers are accounted for. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Gourgeist EX is good. It's just maybe the 5th or 6th best Psychic attacker in the game, not counting Alakazam. Though maybe my opinion would change if we had a basic Psychic type who damaged itself, thus powering up Gourgeist in the process. Well, that card just so happens to exist in the form of Phantump. At any point after your first turn, you can have Phantump place 2 damage counters on itself, then immediately evolve into a Trevenant from hand. Use Telepath Energy or Poffin plus Pokepad, it's easier to pull off than a wet band-aid. Unfortunately, Phantump only hurts itself if you actually evolve, so it's not a guaranteed perfect partner for Gourgeist since PTCGL could screw you over with prizing. Okay, what about on its own? Well, just like Hop's Trevenant, this is another Trevenant who pairs well with Frostlass. While it costs 2 Psychic, which means Wondrous Patch is kinda necessary, Trevenant does 60 base damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on all your opponent's Pokemon. As a master cheek spreader, this gets me excited. Uxie can spread 2 damage counters to everybody on their side of the field. Frostlass loads up damage on ability Pokemon. Seems great, right? Unfortunately, both Vengeful Punch and Rocky Helmet rotate in March, removing our best way to add passive tool-based damage. And Munkidori doesn't work all that well here because Trevenant requires 2 Psychic, so you might not have time to attach Darkness Energy or use Crispin. Still, there's potential here. Prepare for trouble because Trust Your Pilot has to bust out the abacus and do math. Removing Frostlass from the equation, if you Uxie just twice against a full bench, Trev's dealing 300 damage on turn 3, one-shotting almost everything. Though you'll definitely still want at least a 2-2 line of Frostlass. But this is another prime example of what Creatures is doing with the TCG in 2026. They're doing their best to make the format less powerful. For all intents and purposes, Trevenant is a great single prize attacker. Until you remember we already have Azelf. Sure, it's not quite as powerful, dealing 10 plus 10 for each damage counter on all your opponent's Pokemon, but it's a basic who can take advantage of counter gain. Beedrill EX aside, this whole video basically showcases cards that are good, except we currently have better versions of them in the format. When the H-Block cards rotate in March 2027, a lot of these J-Block cards will see a rise in play. Until then, they seem weak in comparison. Don't worry, Psychic isn't the only type getting some love in Chaos Rising. Metal's also getting some, though it's more like the love a child has for a cat it squeezes too hard while the poor thing squirms to escape its sticky clutches. Do you know what Metal needs post-rotation? An attacker who does more than 200 damage. Naturally, Cobalion EX is a Metal-type attacker who does 200 damage. Yeah, remember what I just said about getting weaker cards in 2026? We didn't need another one of these 200 damage metal attackers when we already have 3 good ones, all of whom are seeing a lot of play post-rotation in Japan. And it's not like the ability is that useful. Unlike Iron Leaves, who has a built-in switch effect, Cobalion only lets you move the metal energy when it moves from the bench to the active through manually retreating or switching. So if they paralyzed you or put you to sleep or cornered you, Cobalion's not saving the day. Sure, it could be useful in a Mega Metal deck with Wally, but there's no good Mega Metal deck right now. Starmie and Mawile are sidekicks in Matang and Steven's Metagross decks, only appearing when Batman needs help. I think this is the perfect opportunity to bring back my catchphrase, which you should all pause the video right now to type in the comments. Exactly, Cobalion EX is just a worse Heatran. Then we have Philippe, who boomers will recognize as a Metal-type Blacksmith. Play it, attach up to 2 basic metal energy from your discard pile to one of your metal Pokemon. If that effect sounds familiar to newer players, it's because Captain Sideburn's effect is the exact same Archaludon's ability without the flexibility. What I'm trying to say is that Ryan Philippe is a really good effect in a world where I'm not sure he's needed. I could see it used in a good Mega Metal deck in the future once Matang and Archaludon leave Standard in March 2027. Until then, I imagine we'll only see a single copy thrown into regular Metal decks as a late game way to power up Mega Mawile if you're out of resources, since it can be found with Meowth. Or maybe a copy or two sneaks its way into a Metal-based Terra deck for the same reason. Or maybe Baby King Gambit takes advantage of a guy who clearly hates being kissed on the cheek. Continuing the trend of type-specific special energy, Magnet Metal Energy gives Metal types free retreat. That's fine, I guess, copying the effect of hiding Darkness Energy from the Sword and Shield era. Except Magnet Energy has very little synergy with Matang or Metagross. And we already have Air Balloon for retreating purposes with both Archaludon and Matang having a 2 retreat cost. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if a single copy is chucked into Metal decks, but you're probably not going for a full 4 or playing Colress to find it, so you're mostly just relying on the heart of the cards to find something that might not even improve your deck. Finally, I'll talk a bit more about Prism Tower, who's more useful than just being a way to put Hyper Rogue Angie Floette into play, boasting an effect that several decks will love, including Cerulege, Archaludon, Terrapados with Glass Trumpet, and any Psychic deck. Prism Tower lets you discard 2 cards from hand to draw 1. I think they want us to put Prism Tower into play, discard 2 Psychic from hand, double Wonders Patch to Mega Floette, put Angie on top of it, then Eternity Bloom, all on our first turn. Except it's far better to run Mystery Garden with Telepath Energy to do pretty much the same thing, but better. So its intended partner kinda sucks, but Cerulege and Archaludon might get boosted as a result. There was a lot of reveals this week, and we should have several more in the next 7 days before all of Chaos Rising is known on March 6th. So stay tuned for multiple more preview videos coming soon. For now, Beedrill EX seems like the best card in Chaos Rising, which will release on May 21st in Pokemon TCG Live. Everything else is either a bit of a letdown or just a weaker version of something that already exists. Oh, and thanks to Pokemon Proxies for being awesome, you can see much better versions of Mega Greninja, Delphox, and Chestnut, who I talked about in last week's video, linked in the description. Until next time, post in the comments if you think I'm like Scarlet Witch and lack the vision when it comes to some of these new cards.